Hello, this is a Bosendorfer 170 centimeters long grand piano that's 5'7" long, made in 1927, just coming to stock. So we're just looking at it to see what sort of work we might need to do to improve it, and also to appreciate the piano. And so as we zero in, we can see it's got one-piece ivory keys. So they have been replaced in 1927. At least as far as I know, they never made two-piece ivories. In other words, sorry, never one piece. Normally it's two-piece where you get the front and the back separate. But there's no line here, as you can see. So I presume that's been replaced, and the strings have been replaced, so maybe at the same time. They need buffing, so that's one of the jobs we need to do. But look at the case in general, and it's in reasonable condition. And but not perfect, as you'll see as we look round. And our polisher hasn't had a look at this yet to try tidy it up, so obviously we're going to try and tidy it up as much as we possibly can, or could repolish it. But my feeling is that it's original, and it doesn't really need repolishing. Bits like that can obviously be tidied up. But looking around the whole piano, we can see that it's an original French polish, so that's a nice finish. It's nice to keep the original finish, which we try to do whenever we can. So it has got some defects, but around here, it's pretty much perfect, actually. And looking at the legs, they're excellent too. Looking at the music stand, that's in very good condition. So there's lots of plus points here. The fall, that's a couple of finger marks on there. As I say, the polisher hasn't gone over it yet, so just need to obviously look at it. And he does French polishing normally. This is original French polish, so that can be tidied up. It's difficult to repolish French polish black, as we mentioned before. The top of the lid is probably the worst. As you can see, there's accumulated a few scratches. Nothing here, so that's obviously been held open most of the time, and just the odd scratch. That can all be tidied up, definitely. My colleague, man and friend for over 40 years, who does our polishing, has now worked on the case, and just going to show you the bits that you'd have seen earlier, and just to get some idea of how they're improved. That was a bit pitted and so on, and looking at the top of the fall, now that looks pretty integral. So we haven't completely repolished the whole piano, as I mentioned earlier, but tidied it up. You see the edges here, which were clearly showing signs of wear. So everything that you saw earlier, made it good as much as possible. So around the side here, I think there was some signs of nicks, but they've basically been disguised as well as you possibly can, and I don't think would detract too much. So this confirms, I think, that we don't really need to repolish the whole piano, but if you can afford it and would like us to do so, can do French polishing. I'll show you a piano that has been French polished in a second, actually, to give you an idea of what it will look like. There's the top lid, so that has less blemishes, as you can see, as it was earlier, and indeed this part here too. So just everything that's been possible to improve has been improved, but it's not perfect. So I hope that's satisfactory if you are interested in the piano. It's really brought us a fine quality musician, small piano for musicians. So, and one that certainly I particularly like. This is an upright Gretchen Steinberg, which has been French polished. The client asked us to French polish rather than polyester. I'm not sure you're going to pick up any difference here. Probably just pick up the little bits of dust that have fallen on it as the only difference. But there's very slight lines in this direction, as you can tell, but it's been French polished and not polyestered. Because polyester obviously you don't see those lines at all. But maybe a little bit more authentic than polyestering. This is a finish that can be done, but it actually takes longer than French polishing would, because this will show up every slight imperfection, whereas wood, it tends to be more disguised looking. Obviously we try and do that perfectly, but French polished black is extremely difficult to do. But if you're interested in that, then let us know. It's at least a third longer it takes, and if not twice, it's not half as long again to French polished black that it does to French polished wood. The inside of the piano is all original. It's not perfect, as you can see the frame. Again, we can try to tidy that up slightly, but it's rather than repolish the whole frame, which would then look perfect, which you can obviously do, but I don't really think it's essential on this piano. Now we have new bass strings here. They're not the originals. If you see other videos we've got of Bosendorfer, you'll see the special style that they have there, but I often feel the tone gets lost when the strings are changed, but in this case, I'm very glad to be able to report that it hasn't. It's very close to the original. Nice fruity sound. A very good break point here. Not too much difference. As we mentioned before, the good manufacturer manages to get a not much tone difference between the bass and the tenor. And right throughout, really pleased with the sound of this piano. And as we'll see soon, it hasn't been used an awful lot. Now, say the bass has been restrung and the treble's been restrung. I'm pretty sure about that. And the red felt could be either the 1927. I've checked on a video. It's exactly the same colour red felt on that one. And interesting enough, it's green felt on the floor. This is probably only going to interest people in the trade, but there's green felt here. And I checked on the other video, funnily enough, and that also had green felt here. So whether they standardly put green felt here and red felt here, for you very experienced with Bosendorfer, you might be able to comment and help there, because it's good to sort of authenticate what I'm saying, and I always appreciate comments. The dampers are regulated extremely well. I have done fine regulation on the action. I'll just show you what that fine regulation is that we do each time. By the way, the serial number on these Bosendorfers of this age is printed on the stamped on the soundboard there. That's often missing or covered over with dust and things. The soundboard's in perfect condition, so that's very encouraging. The piano's not been used that much, and I'm pretty certain these are original hammers. Again, I looked at an old video of when we sold one of these 1927, and exactly the same looking hammer. So I think these are original. Whether there's undercovering on some Bosendorfers, I'm not sure. Certainly modern ones there is, but on this age I haven't seen undercovering. I don't think so. If you're in the trade and like to verify that, really helpful. These are replaced rollers, knuckles, so we call them as well. And we've done some regulation in the middle here, just to make the spring a little bit more responsive. This B is not quite so fast, and that's fine, but over the years, over a 20-year period, then it'll gradually get weaker, so we want to strengthen the spring slightly, and that's done by this adjustment screw there. So let's just turn slightly, and that strengthens the springs. Other regulation we do is just the set off or let off, that just turned like that, and get it as close as possible. I'll show you in a second what it looks like. Now, so if it's, for instance, there's the B and there's the C, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but B lets off slightly before C, so we want to get it as late as possible, but within margins of error, so that it's safe and does let off properly. And it means you can play slightly more sensitively, and the C sharp I've done as well, just to double check. So I'll get them close, but not so much so that they're not going to work properly, and leave a little margin of error too, but they can certainly get a little bit closer than the B. And I've adjusted the drop screw again to get it as close as possible within a margin of safety, just to get it a little bit more sensitive. And I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but you can quite clearly see it on there actually, that the C stays closer to the string than the B does, and that again makes it more sensitive. So that's a checklist for the piano, and I mentioned the regulation here, just to mention that we do more regulation. So I have the back check. It's pretty good, the back check actually, so just checking all the regulations, see what we can do to improve it. Interesting enough, the piano's got its original socks, so I think it's amusing to see these. If we look down, then I call them socks. I'm not sure if that's the right name, but they see they're over the top of the pedal, and just somebody's left them on, and you can see how little use the piano's had. If we take a sock off, we can see what sort of wear there is on the right hand pedal there, and so I'm going to take the sock off. So none really. You can see a difference in colouring slightly, but there's no wear on it. And the hammers, as we looked at before, need a bit of voicing, but really not much use in them either. So that's extremely encouraging. Looking back at the check sheet then, oh, by the way, the pedals are very low. They're 4.5 centimetres from the floor, and there's not huge leg room, but you could raise up quite happily. 1 inch, that's about sort of 2.4 centimeters, and that would be fine if you get grass caster cups. If you are tall and you'd like more height, then that's really possible. This is fine for my legs, I can fit them under, though maybe I would like some small caster cups just to lift it up very slightly, and the pedals wouldn't be very high. 7 centimeters is a lot of pedals are 7 centimeters, so 4.5, lots of leeway there. I often go on about that, but that's because if you don't come to try the piano, that's one thing that I need to make you aware of. And looking at or I'd like to, so looking at the work that he's doing, does need lubricating. The weight is slightly high, but with lubrication I can bring that down, I'm pretty certain, to 52, as we mentioned many times, about 50 in the centre. And there's one anomaly there, actually, is a bit light already, that one, for some reason. So I'll have to look into that. But the hinges are tight, so not quite sure why that should be, but these are the sort of things we'll look at. And the B is where one note's slightly brighter. As I go through it, and I think it's the one above that, actually. There we are, slightly bright. We do go, I have pitch raced the piano from 439.5 to 440.5, just to get the feeling of the tuning pins, and set any of them I feel might be very slightly loose. If it's been tuned hugely, then they do slightly start to go loose, and you need to roughen up the wood slightly. So good enough now for another 20 years, providing you keep the environment with sensible humidity and temperature, then that should be no problem at all. I hope that's been helpful. I'm going to play the piano now and just listen to the tone and make a few more comments. So that's a Bosendorfer 170, 5'7" long grand piano, made in 1927. And as I mentioned before on other Bosendorfer videos that we've done, we have sold as many as I can get hold of these, really. Just one of my favourites. I had one in my house for a very long time, and it's ideal for a not too big a room. It's got a delicious tone. Plays very sensitively already. I'm going to make it more sensitive by more regulation, more fine. But wherever you play, it's just a delight. Both touch and tone. Like the touch and the tone on these Bosendorfers is unsurpassed, really. There's nothing better. It does play extremely sensitively, so if you want to play really quietly, it'll allow you to. And as I say, if we fine regulate, play even more sensitively. Just want to make a general comment about pianos of this era and even earlier, and that is, I found out recently, reading the book by Franz Moore about my life with a great pianist, and he tuned and was the main tuner for Horowitz for many, many years. And Horowitz liked an older piano, although I think it was in the 70s and 80s that he was, or perhaps 60s and 70s, I'm not sure, I'll have to look that one up, when he tuned for Horowitz. But Horowitz was using a 1911 Steinway, not a new one, which was one of his favourites. And it's because it's to do with the tone of the piano, and all pianos are individual. So really it's down to an individual piano, whether we really like it or not. And they can vary quite considerably. So it's not like a mass-produced piano with like 100,000 made a year. It's not a huge number made every year. So much more of a hand-built piano. And different pianists like different touch. Apparently Horowitz liked a very light touch, extremely light touch. I think 47 grams or below. Well, 47 isn't extremely light, but he liked a light touch, and Rubinstein, who he also tuned for, liked a heavy touch. So it's interesting to see that pianists vary. So we can customize it whatever you like, really. I find the touch exquisite at the moment. So you could come and obviously try the piano. If you can't come to try the piano, then we're very happy for you to try it out for a while. And we have a scheme, which you look on our rental scheme, which you can use if you want to. Obviously, it's cheaper to buy the whole thing up front, and it's more simple. And I really don't think you're going to need that period of trying it out. So I hope that's helpful. Thank you very much for listening. If you're interested, please email info@robertspianos.com and let us know what you'd like to do.